I'm here with Jamie Dew, who is the Dean of the college at Southeastern Seminary. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Okay. and we're here on this session to talk about theology and science. Yeah. And one of the things that you hear is there's this war going on between Christian theology and scientists, or the practice of science. And tell us a little bit about that. Do you think it's a war? Should we view it as a war?
Yeah. So a lot of people think that there really is a war, and it's kind of easy to see why they'd say that, because you have people in the secular world, sciences, that will say very mean and nasty things about all religious people and theology, and then vice versa. You have people in the churches, especially in more conservative settings, that will say very mean and awful things about evolution and science. And so when you just look in our culture at these two disciplines or these two areas, they are often saying things that are very hostile to each other. So it's very easy to get the impression, and for many people to make the argument, that these two are enemies with each other. I think, though, that when we look at that historically, I think we have to admit that clearly there are times and places and even certain issues where these two are at odds with each other and they're saying different things. And at times they are in fact bitterly opposed to each other. But I don't think that that's the whole story. I don't think that you can really just give this little label of warfare to these two disciplines and say that that's the nature of the relationship. I think there are good reasons that we could look at to say that no, that's really not the case. They could work together, and they might even actually be friends at times.
Yeah, give us some of this. So just give us a little taste of our viewers, a little taste of where you see helpful interaction, why you would say that they don't have to be in warfare, they don't have to be in conflict.
Yeah, so I would point to a couple things. Number one, I would just say historically, it's not been the case across the board of history that these two are enemies with each other. And the reason I say that is when the scientific revolution is taking place, and it's taking place in Europe, and it's taking place in Europe right in and after the Protestant Reformation. And a lot of intellectual historians will point back to that particular period and what's going on there, and note that there are some worldview issues going on present in the Reformation that really are very conducive to the rise of modern science. And that's significant because the revolution didn't take place in China. It didn't take place in North America in the ancient world with the Aztecs. It didn't take place in all these civilizations in Egypt or any of those places where there were clearly very, very intelligent people and people that were making really great technologies. It took place in Europe in and after the Reformation. And so there's something about this worldview of Christianity that really helps give rise to modern science. And so, not surprisingly then, a lot of your early scientists were actually Christian theists. So to say that the scientist and the theologian are enemies with each other, well, that doesn't recognize the fact that it used to be the case that often the scientist and the theologian was the same person. So historically, I don't think you can make that case. I also think that just on a philosophical level, that when we look at the discipline of science and we look at the discipline of theology, that there are some basic worldview assumptions down at the deep level of these two disciplines that are actually the same assumptions. So you have some philosophers and theologians like Alistair McGrath or even Alvin Plantinga, for example, has argued that on the surface there's conflict between these two, but the conflict is superficial. But down underneath that, there's deep concord, agreement between these two. So yeah, we may disagree over some particular doctrines or particular scientific theories, but philosophically, on a worldview level, there's some assumptions that we share that are common. And then lastly, I would point to places where we can benefit from each other. I think that the Christian theology can benefit from science in a variety of ways. One, science helps us cure people of diseases and sicknesses and things like that. Science also gives us some confirmation of some of our core doctrines, say like creation and some things like that. But then the flip is true of that as well. I think Christian theology can assist natural science, because natural science, this is a point McGrath makes a lot, natural science assumes a rational world, a structural world, a discernible world, but naturalism could not give it that kind of assumption. Christian theism, however, could, because Christian theism says there is a God who is rational. This God created us to be rational, and He created a world that's rational. So I think historically, philosophically, and even just practically, these two disciplines could really benefit from each other.
Yeah, very good. So are you saying, just to maybe make one more point here or elaborate, are you saying that, or to put it in my own words for our viewers, that really to get off the ground and even to be able to trust our reason, we have to have a good, reason to trust our reason. And that's something that Christianity and theism gives us, whereas some other worldviews, you wouldn't even have, you don't have a good reason to actually trust your ability to kind of make sense of the world.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So science itself is a discipline trying to understand the natural world. Science itself is not committed one way or the other to a worldview. So if it wants to build upon a worldview, its choices are two: Christian theism or naturalism. And it's Christian theism that really gives it the anchor and the depth and the foundation that it needs for rationality to make sense at all.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we want to do at Liberty is bring these discussions together, to have these discussions between scientists and people in this world who's wrestling with these things, and theologians. So we appreciate Jamie talking to us about this.